I'm 78 years old, and every morning I do something so small, so ordinary, that you might overlook it, but for me it's become the one habit that changed everything. Now, I'm not here to sell you a miracle. This isn't a magic pill, a celebrity-endorsed treatment, or something from a late-night commercial. What I'm about to share is much simpler. It's old, it's natural, and most importantly, it works. You see, there was a time not too long ago when I thought the aches, the stiffness, the slow mornings were just part of growing older. I woke up each day feeling like my body was leaving me behind. My joints complained before I even got out of bed, my digestion was unpredictable, and my spirit, well, it felt like it was dimming, quietly, day by day. But something shifted, not overnight, and not with anything dramatic. It started with a conversation, a quiet one, over coffee, and it led me to a small, honest change, a single spoonful of something you probably already have in your kitchen. And no, it didn't make me young again, but it helped me feel more alive, more present, and more like myself. If you've ever wondered whether a small natural habit could help you feel better in your body, sleep more deeply, and start your mornings with clarity instead of fatigue, then I invite you to stay with me for a few minutes. Because what I'm going to share might be exactly what your body has been asking for, gently, patiently, all along. One of the weights we start to accept, there's something many of us rarely admit out loud. It's that quiet moment when you wake up and realize your body isn't quite yours anymore. You sit up in bed, and the first thing you feel is not sunlight or peace, it's stiffness, pressure in your lower back, joints that resist even the smallest movements. A kind of heaviness that doesn't come from weight, it comes from age, from time, from years of quietly carrying more than we notice. I'm 78 now, but back then in my early 70s, I told myself this was just what happens, it's aging, no one escapes it. I accepted the tired mornings, the shortness of breath, the slow digestion that made every meal feel like a gamble. I accepted that some days I didn't feel like going for a walk, or calling a friend, or even leaving the house. But what I never told anyone, not my kids, not even my wife, was that I also started feeling invisible, not to others, but to myself. I wasn't sad, I wasn't angry, I was just fading a little more each day. I would look in the mirror and recognize the face, but feel like something deeper was slipping away, my energy, my motivation, my desire to participate in life. I was moving through my days like a ghost, doing the basics, smiling politely, but I wasn't really living. And I told myself that was okay, that it was part of growing older, that it was normal. But the truth is, I didn't feel normal. I felt disconnected from myself, from the world, from that inner fire that once made me excited to wake up and start the day. And at some point, quietly, without drama, I started giving up. I stopped doing the things that used to light me up, stopped organizing my bookshelves, stopped writing notes to my grandkids, stopped reading before bed because my eyes got tired, and so did my brain. What I didn't realize at the time was this: I wasn't giving in to age, I was giving in to the belief that nothing could change. But something inside me, small but stubborn, kept whispering, there has to be more than this. And eventually, I listened. The quiet shift that started with a question. Change didn't begin with a doctor or a diagnosis. It didn't come from a health show, a product, or a sudden health scare. It came from a single sentence, spoken softly across a quiet morning table. I was sitting in the kitchen with my daughter. She had just made us coffee. I was stirring mine absent-mindedly, complaining under my breath about my digestion again, something I did a lot back then. Then, without even looking up from her mug, she asked me, "Dad, what if your body isn't broken? What if it just needs something different?" That stopped me, because for years I'd been piling on medications, one for joint pain, one for sleep, one for digestion, one for energy. And still, I didn't feel better. If anything, I felt more confused, like I was constantly treating the symptoms but never finding the root. But her question hit a different part of me, the part that still wanted to believe my body was capable of feeling good again. Not young, not perfect, but alive. She started telling me about things she had been learning, about how people were going back to simpler solutions, real food, ancient habits, old remedies that weren't trendy or packaged in bright labels, but that had stood the test of time. She said, "A lot of people my age are rediscovering things our grandparents already knew before medicine became big business." It wasn't a lecture. She didn't push. But something in the way she said it lit a spark. It reminded me that maybe I had been looking in the wrong direction. Maybe health wasn't something I could find in a bottle, but in a habit, a ritual, something gentle and grounded. A few days later, I was outside chatting with a neighbor, an older gentleman like me. He mentioned he had started taking a spoonful of extra virgin olive oil every morning. He said it helped with his digestion, his joints, even his sleep. At first I smiled politely. I'd heard things like that before. But something about his tone, so calm, so casual, made me curious. It didn't sound like hype. It sounded like truth. So that night, I went home and did something I hadn't done in a long time. I started reading. Not news headlines, not opinions. Just stories, personal stories from people like me. People who didn't want to fight their bodies anymore, but wanted to work with them. I didn't make any decisions right away, but I started wondering, what if change doesn't have to be big? What if it just has to be real? 3. The first spoonful, and what came next. Followed. I spent the next few days quietly researching. No rush, no urgency. Just curiosity. What I found surprised me. Olive oil, especially the high-quality kind, cold-pressed extra virgin, had been used for centuries in places where people lived long, healthy lives. Not just for cooking, but for health, for vitality. And yet somehow, I had never thought of it as anything more than a salad dressing. So I ordered a small bottle, not from a big supermarket, but from a small trusted source, one that promised the oil was pure, untouched by heat or chemicals. I placed it on the kitchen counter, and I waited. I told no one. I just let it sit there, quietly like an invitation. Then, one morning, after waking up with the usual fog in my head and the usual knot in my stomach, I opened the bottle, poured a tablespoon, breathed in the scent, and took it in. Just like that. No toast, no coffee. Just one spoonful of oil. Cold, golden, earthy. I expected it to feel heavy. It didn't. Went down smooth, almost comforting. And then I waited. The first day, nothing dramatic happened. I didn't expect it to, but something small caught my attention. My stomach didn't complain after breakfast. The second day, I noticed I didn't need that second cup of coffee. By the end of the week, the tightness in my gut, the pressure that usually followed meals was gone. I was walking a bit farther. I wasn't grunting as I stood up from the chair. So I kept going. One spoonful each morning, on an empty stomach. No distractions, no changes to anything else. By week 2, my fingers moved more easily when I wrote. My knees cracked less. My morning brain fog started to lift a little earlier. I felt steadier. But most surprising of all was this feeling, not physical, not emotional, but something in between. A sense that I was waking up. Not just in body, but in spirit. I didn't feel younger. I felt present. And in a life where time slips by faster with each passing year. That more than anything. 4. A ritual, not a remedy. After a few weeks, this little habit, one spoonful of olive oil each morning, began to feel like more than just a health tip. It felt like a ritual, something sacred in its simplicity. I began to look forward to it, not just for how it made my body feel, but for what it gave me emotionally. A sense of rhythm, of intention. It was a way of saying to myself, I'm still here, I'm still worth showing up for. It might sound silly to some, but to me, it was the first time in years I'd made a choice purely for my well-being, not to fix a problem, but to care for myself. Gently, without urgency or fear. I took the oil first thing in the morning, on an empty stomach. Some days I followed it with a bit of warm water and lemon. Other days just the oil alone. I didn't gulp it down like medicine. I paused. I breathed. I let it become a quiet moment of connection. My body, my breath, this small act of care. No screens, no distractions, just me. And gradually, it began to change more than just my digestion. The crashes I used to feel mid-morning, the dip in energy that left me craving sugar or caffeine, they stopped coming. My mornings felt smoother. I moved more easily. I started doing stretches again. Just 5 minutes, nothing fancy. But even that felt like reclaiming something. I noticed my mood was different too. I was less irritable, less impatient, more curious again. I found myself looking out the window more enjoying the trees, the birds, the morning light. I found myself humming while making breakfast. I even started journaling again, a habit I hadn't touched in years. That single spoonful wasn't just giving my body nutrients. It was giving my life structure. It reminded me that healing doesn't always start in the clinic. Sometimes it starts in the kitchen, in silence, with something as humble as olive oil. And over time, the ritual became more powerful than the oil itself. Because it wasn't about fixing, it was about listening. 5. The surprising changes that follow. I didn't expect much when I started. I thought if I was lucky, maybe my stomach would settle a bit. Maybe I'd sleep a little better. That was the extent of my hope. But slowly my body began to respond in ways I hadn't imagined. It started with digestion. Meals no longer felt like burdens. The heaviness that used to sit in my gut after eating, it faded. I wasn't popping antacids anymore. I didn't feel bloated after lunch. I was going to the bathroom regularly, which at my age is something I now deeply appreciate. Then came the joints. I didn't have a major condition, no diagnosis, no surgery. But the stiffness, the groans, the slow starts, they were all part of daily life. Until they weren't. It didn't happen all at once. But one morning, I stood up from bed and noticed no ache in my knees. I climbed the stairs in my building and realized I hadn't grabbed the handrail. I went on a longer walk and didn't have to stop halfway through to rest. These were small victories, but to me they felt enormous because each one reminded me that my body wasn't giving up. It had just needed the right support. Something gentle, something natural, something real. Even my sleep improved. I used to toss and turn, waking up 3, 4, sometimes 5 times a night. But with this new routine, my nights became quieter. I fell asleep faster, stayed asleep longer, woke up feeling like I'd actually rested, not just survived the night. And with better sleep came better moods. I was less tense, more patient, even funny again. I started to feel like myself, not the younger version of me, but the truer one. The one who's been there all along, just waiting for some space to breathe. No drug ever gave me that feeling. This oil didn't promise to turn back time, but it gave me back presence. And in many ways, that's more valuable than youth. 6. A clearer mind, a softer heart. What caught me most off guard wasn't the digestion or the joints. It was my mind. For years I'd lived with what I called mental fog. I'd forget what I was saying mid-sentence. I'd open the fridge and stand there, trying to remember why. I'd reread the same paragraph in a book 3 times and still not recall it. At first I blamed it on age, on getting slower, on normal decline, but deep down, I hated it. It made me feel distant, disconnected from the world and from myself. But then something shifted. After a few weeks of this daily ritual, my mind began to feel lighter. Not faster, not sharper, like in my youth, but clearer, more focused. I could carry on a conversation without losing track. I remembered names more easily. I even started reading again and enjoying it. It was like the static in my brain had quieted down. I wasn't second-guessing myself as much. I didn't feel as overwhelmed by small tasks. I felt present. I started noticing things again. The way the sunlight fell across my living room, the rhythm of my breath during a walk, the joy in a handwritten letter from my granddaughter. And emotionally, I was more steady. I wasn't snapping over little things. I wasn't withdrawing. I felt open again, like I could feel the world around me without being swallowed by it. That surprised me more than anything. Because when you start your day with one small act of care, something that asks nothing from you except to show up, it does something to your spirit. It builds trust. Really, it reminds you that you're still capable of being good to yourself. And that's not just healing, that's hope. 7. The mistakes I made so you don't have to. By the time I'd made this little habit part of my life, I started telling a few friends about it. Naturally, they were curious. Some of them asked what brand I used. Some ran to the grocery store and bought the first bottle of olive oil they could find. And a few days later, they came back to me and said, "I don't feel any different." That's when I realized something important. Not all olive oil is created equal. In fact, most of what's sold in big-name stores isn't what you think it is. Even if the label says healthy or light or classic, chances are it's been processed, blended with cheaper oils, or exposed to heat during production. And when that happens, all the nutrients, the very compounds that give your body what it needs, are gone. I made that mistake too. In the beginning, I grabbed a big plastic bottle off the shelf, took it every morning for a week and nothing. I felt bloated, sluggish, even slightly off. It wasn't until I started reading the fine print that I realized I was taking in oil that had been refined beyond recognition. The kind that works, the kind that's been used for centuries in places where people live into their 90s and beyond, is extra virgin, cold-pressed and pure. It's usually stored in dark glass bottles to protect it from light. And it smells fresh, almost grassy, even fruity. That's how you know it still has life in it. Another mistake, taking too much. I figured if 1 tablespoon is good, 2 must be better. Wrong. Within a few days, I felt heavy. My digestion went off again. I had to dial it back. And that's when I learned something simple. More isn't better. Consistency is better. And of course, everyone's body is different. Some folks have sensitivities. Others may be on medications or have conditions that make even healthy oils a bit tricky. I always tell people, start slow. Begin with half a teaspoon. See how you feel. Listen to your body like you would an old friend. Don't treat this like a cure, treat it like a conversation. Because what works beautifully for one person may need to be adjusted for another. And that's not a failure, that's wisdom. 8. A simple invitation, not a prescription. Now after all this, you might be wondering, so what should I do? And my answer is simple. I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm here to invite you to try something that has made a real, tangible difference in my life. Not because it's magic, not because I think it will fix everything, but because I believe small acts of care can lead to big shifts over time, especially when they're done with intention, not desperation. So if this speaks to you, just start small. Buy a bottle of real cold-pressed, extra virgin olive oil. Make sure it's in a dark glass bottle. Make sure it's not refined or mixed with other oils. And keep it simple. Each morning, before anything else, before coffee, before breakfast, take 1 tablespoon, or even just half to begin with. Let it settle in your body. Don't rush. Don't expect fireworks. Just give yourself the chance to notice. Maybe your digestion feels smoother. Maybe your joints complain a little less. Maybe you sleep better. Maybe, like me, you begin to feel just a little more like yourself. That's all this is. A quiet invitation to show up for yourself. A chance to explore, to listen, to reconnect. There's no membership, no subscription, no price tag. Just a choice. You can keep living exactly as you have been, and that's okay. Or you can try this for 1 week, 7 mornings, 1 spoonful, and see what happens. You might not notice much at first, but pay attention. Pay attention to how your body feels after meals, to your energy at mid-morning, to how you sleep, to how you feel in the quiet parts of the day. You don't have to decide today. You don't have to tell anyone. Just try. The most powerful changes in my life didn't come from the loud moments, they came from the quiet ones. The ones no one saw. The ones that began with a small choice and turned into a new way of living. 7 days of trust. If you've made it with me this far, I'd like to offer you a simple idea, not a promise, not a cure, just a moment of trust. Give it 7 days. 7 mornings where you make one small choice just for yourself. Not for your doctor, not because someone told you to, but because something inside you whispers, what if? What if you took 1 tablespoon of cold-pressed, extra virgin olive oil each morning before breakfast? Nothing fancy, just the oil, just you. Maybe you follow it with warm water. Maybe not, that part is up to you. But the real shift isn't in the oil, it's in the act. The quiet commitment you make each morning to listen to your body, to begin the day with care, not caffeine, with nourishment, not noise. You might not feel anything dramatic, and that's okay. Some changes are like seeds. They work beneath the surface, quietly rooting themselves until one day you notice. You're sleeping better. You're standing taller. You're not as tense. You breathe easier. You smile without effort. That's how it happened for me. It didn't come in a flash. It came in little signs. My belt fitting more comfortably. My knees no longer complaining as I climbed the stairs. My ability to focus returning, like fog lifting from the shore. And in those moments I felt something return. Not youth, not strength, but belief. That my body still wants to work with me, not against me. So again, I'm not asking you to change your life overnight. I'm asking you to begin noticing it. Give yourself this one gift. 7 days of attention. 7 days of listening to your digestion, your sleep, your thoughts. 7 days of asking your body what it needs and offering it something simple and kind. That's not a treatment, that's not a health hack. That's self-respect. And at our age, that may be the most powerful medicine we have left. 10. A life still worth showing up for. I'll be honest with you, this spoonful of oil didn't erase my wrinkles. It didn't take me back to 40. I still move slower than I used to. I still forget where I put my reading glasses. My hair is still silver, and my knees still crack from time to time. But what it gave me is far more valuable than pretending I'm young again. It gave me presence. It brought me back into my own life, one small morning at a time. It reminded me that even now, especially now, my body deserves attention. My days still hold meaning. My choices still matter. I began showing up for my mornings, then my afternoons, then slowly for my relationships again. I started walking with purpose, writing with clarity, calling people I hadn't spoken to in years. And when I looked in the mirror, I no longer saw a man fading, I saw a man returning, not to the past, but to himself. And that is something I wish for you too. This isn't about a trend, it's about a turning point. A moment where you say, I'm not done yet. Where you decide that even if the world moves fast, you still get to live slow, full and awake. So if any part of my story speaks to yours, let me gently ask you, are you willing to give yourself this gift? Not forever, just for 1 week. And if you do, if you try it, and you feel even a little more alive, a little more connected, I hope you'll share that in the comments. I read every word, because your story, just like mine, may be exactly what someone else needs to hear. And if you know someone, an old friend, a loved one, a neighbor, who might need a reason to hope again, send them this video. You might just help them feel strong again. One breath, one step, one spoonful at a time. We may not get back the years behind us, but we can absolutely reclaim the life inside the years we still have. Thank you for spending this time with me. If what I've shared today has touched something, if I've stirred in you a memory, a quiet question, a little spark, then I'm grateful not because I have the answers, but because I believe we're all walking through this season of life together. And sometimes, hearing a voice that says, I've been there too, is more healing than any advice. So if you decide to try this small habit, I hope you do it not out of pressure, but out of kindness. Kindness to your body, kindness to your story. And if you notice something shift, even slightly, I'd love to hear about it. Leave a comment, I read them all, because your voice matters, and it might just be the encouragement someone else is waiting for. And if you know someone, maybe a friend, a sibling, someone you care about, who could use a small reminder that their life still holds energy, meaning and strength, share this video with them. Sometimes the smallest act, a shared story, a tablespoon of oil, a gentle "you're not alone" can carry more weight than we realize. Until next time, take good care of yourself. Your body may be up to keep moving forward, to keep choosing care, to keep embracing each new day with hope. Because while our bodies age, our spirits hold the timeless power to grow, heal and shine. And that truly is a beautiful life worth living.